Hey, good evening, everyone. This is Lowman02. I'm actually going to be doing a second video series for the day because randomly I was able to meet up with player Stsung on MTGO, vintage aficionado, and also a very great artist. If you had a chance to check out some of her work, check it out on Stsung's Altars. That's Stsung Altars. If you just Google it, you should see some pretty interesting art. Check out the one with the Stoneforge Mystic and the sword Umezawa's Jitte Batter Skull set. It's my personal favorite. But anyway, a very good player, and we had the opportunity to play two matches with her today. And I hope we didn't keep her from too much of her work. But one of the decks we used to face her was this one right here. What you're really looking at is a combo control deck that is very, very much so focused on getting a Splinter Twin or Splinter Twin like combination into play and then utilizing that to win the game. The rest of the deck is really just a control shell that runs, good low range burn spells, some good efficient counter spells, and then just generally good 2-for-1 cards. Like you see like cards like Arc Trail, cards like Flame Tongue Kavu. It is a Jeskai build. The last build that I ran was Blue Moon, which actually you'll see she is on, and I think tends to beat this deck because of the greedier mana base that I'm running on a deck like this. But where I think a deck like this is benefited over like a Blue Moon build is really in the board. And I think when you start bringing white into a deck, you look at a lot more capability to beat the more aggressive strategies in the format. Whereas I think a deck like Blue Moon, while it is great against a lot of the greedier 3-color and more, and even sometimes 2-color decks in the format, I think where it falls short is in the aggressive matchup. I haven't been really proven empirically in that statement yet because in most of the competitive and even the casual matches I've played Blue Moon against, like, let's say mono red, I don't think I've ever faced the White Weenie or Death and Taxes matchup. Um, I've been victorious. I don't feel like I should have been favored most of the time though, just because a lot of the threats they run can get under the curve of your ability to control it. So this is the first deck we'll be playing. As you can see, it's a Kiki-Jiki, Splinter Twin. It's basically got every combo. You got Restoration Angel, Zealous Conscripts, Splinter Twin, Kiki-Jiki. You have the Deceiver and Pestermite package. You have the Imperial Recruiter, and one of the cards I very briefly talked about in forum speak was Recruiter of the Guard, which I didn't make a big comment on because I think it's pretty obvious what this card is for you. I mean, it finds you an additional combo piece in this combo. And there's other good cards, good efficient cards like Young Pyromancer. You have Thing in the Ice, Snapcaster Mage, Jace Vryn's Prodigy. You have the True Name. You also have the Vendilion Click, and then like the Monastery Mentor. One of the cards that I've been a little less impressed with, even though it's a great card, is like a card like True Name. We're not running like a sword package in this deck, so I mean this card is just kind of a slower clock in this deck, but it is a good blocker, so it keeps you alive for a while while you get your combo into play. Also run a pretty heavy Planeswalker package, Nahiri. The idea behind Nahiri in this deck, I mean, we're not putting Emrakul into play or like a Wormcoil Engine or something to win like instantaneously or just irrevocably change the game. But what it can do is if it ever gets, well, one, it filters for you, which allows you to get to your combo. It can be used for removal. And then if you ever do max it out and for some reason you can't find your combo, you should have hopefully found one piece by then on that much mana. And you can, zip in your Kiki-Jiki and just win the game on the spot with another combo piece. Johnny Vengeance, maybe more questionable. Yeah, he does tap down a land. Really, the big thing with this card is just it tends to beat aggressive matchups. So I kind of like it here. I mean, it's a lot like Lightning Helix right here. We didn't run the 4 mana, 4 damage Lightning Helix card. I forget what it's called. But these two cards kind of just give you some reach and some ability against the more aggressive strategies. That's what you're looking at. Another card that I think one of the few creature 1-drops that we have in the deck is actually Weathered Wayfarer. Mother of Runes may be one that is worth questioning, but on 18 creatures, I just don't think it's as good in a deck like this. Whereas Weathered Wayfarer is always going to be awesome. We don't run any like crazy land combos in this deck, but it's able to get you Wasteland, Tectonic Edge, and then just to fix your mana and really just gain card advantage, to grind out card advantage with it is really high. As you also see, we have cards like Tithe do the same thing, which is another, I think this card is very powerful. And looking at this, actually, it probably should be land tax. So newer deck. I built this one fairly recently, or actually, this was an older deck that I modified heavily recently. I don't think was very good when I first started modifying it. So, that said, I think looking at this deck, we probably need a land tax in here if we're going to keep the 3-color. So that's it for the deck tech on that. So we played 2 matches. She'll play Blue Moon both times, which, if you've had a chance to look through my deck tech, you've seen my Blue Moon build. It's actually fairly similar to this. It has the Kiki-Jiki, the Splinter Twin kind of combo going for it, a boatload of basics, and then just tons of non-basic hate main, plus a bunch of other control elements, and then you're grinding your way into, a Kiki-Jiki combo, or just winning with something silly after countering all their stuff or making their mana worthless. I think this deck is generally weak against aggressive strategies. I think, when you're still looking at like the 3, 4, 5-color mid-range decks, it is good against that deck, very good against that deck, because it's able to stop their mana. And then when you start looking at control, I think it's decent against a control build as well. Just depending on how many colors. 2-color control can be a little more difficult. And, as you can see, we ended up losing to Michelle. We played this competitively. But I think one of the times is a bit due to variance with having to mold a 5 and then, kind of getting land screwed and losing that one. The second deck we'll play against her. That's kind of just an idea of what her deck looks like. It's not her deck whatsoever. Is White Weenie. So the main has not changed, I think, at all in this deck since we last played it competitively. The board has. So what I ended up taking out, since a card I never played competitively, was Tragic Arrogance. The idea behind Tragic Arrogance had been to have a card that helps you come from behind against mid-range. The most difficult matchup for this deck is mid-range by far. Anything that splashes like green X decks, green X good stuff decks, this deck tends to have a little more of a difficult time beating. Now, it has the equipment package to kind of pair itself up against that. It has Armageddons to put them back on lands, but generally they're able to play threats on turns 2 and 3. And if they have, if they're on the play, turn 4 as well, they tend to outclass the creatures this deck's playing. There's a few grow-style cards in the deck that allow you to kind of pair off of that and make better cards. So I run competitively for a little while. I think it used to be Cataclysm, but because that allowed them the choice, I ended up cutting that card. Even though it was essentially like a third Armageddon effect, but only being able to keep one creature, I just generally expect that if I'm playing an unfavorable matchup, they're gonna have one creature that's better than mine. I'm playing control, and they land a Consecrated Sphinx. That's probably gonna be like one of the few threats they have on the board. But what am I gonna keep? A Consecrated Sphinx, like a Thalia Heretic Cathar. I just don't think it's good in that matchup per se. Are they gonna keep their Wormcoil Engine in one land, and I'm gonna keep a Thalia in one land. Even if that thing's sorted up, I'm not winning that, So I ended up cutting Cataclysm, replaced it at one point in time for Tragic Arrogance, and the card just never came into play because hitting 5 lands in this deck, it's a 36 land deck. It can hit 5 lands. It just generally doesn't happen by turn 5, which is really where that card is really going to shine. And I never cast it. I never found the time to cast it. I brought it in a bit, and it was against the green X decks, but I just never cast it. So what I've done is I've taken that card out. I've replaced it with Sanctum Prelate, which is, I believe, it's either a new commander card or a new a conspiracy card. It was released in the treasure chest on MTGO, and as you can see, this card is just it's a kind of a crappy body. We have some banter on it in the MTGO Salvation forum for 100 Card Singleton right now. But what this card really is, in my opinion, against the right deck, is a Chalice of the Void. So what my thinking was in adding this card in is it helps close out control matchups because it stops the most relevant wraths in the white realm, and even black really, outside of Toxic Deluge. If you name 4 on this thing, you can stop most of the wraths. It forces them to go a turn later and use a card like Hollow Burial, which I haven't really seen used much. And/or a card like Terminus, which they're either got to luck sack off the top, or they're going to wait 2 additional turns. 2 turns against this deck, if you're not dealing with the board state, is too long. It's going to close the game out before then. If you're not either putting down a relevant threat that can effectively block my creatures and probably gain you life, because at that point, I'm going to be wider than the decks I'm playing are. You're not gonna win. So I see this as kind of like being a Chalice of the Void. It's very targeted at the 4-drop spot. in control builds. I think it is a strong board card. It is a tiny body, albeit, but I think the effect it gives you, giving you a couple extra turns, makes up for the 2/2 body. Because if I get 2 extra turns with my full team, yeah, I may not be hitting for 4 like I would be with a Breemaz, or even more possibly with like a Silverblade Paladin. But I'm hitting with him probably 2 or 3 additional times plus the entire team. So in a lot of ways, I think you're gaining virtual damage through a card like this in the right matchup. That's the only change that happened to the white weenie deck, and we'll go to the matches real quick. The first match, kind of as I talked about, is my Jeskai twin, and we got stomped in both these games right here by Stsung. So you look at our initial keep, and we don't know what she's on in the beginning. We end up having to mull down to 5. We have, I think a 1-lander, and then this hand right here is great. So let's go over the keep right fast. We have a Wooden Foothills, which is going to fix for our red-blue. We have a Tundra. So we know we have a Jace that can come out on turn 2. We also have an Arc Trail to kind of back up against any aggressive or Mana Dorks, whatever she's playing. And then we have a Geist Saint Traff that I think, if she's unable to get a relevant threat down early, we're going to be able to close the game out with. You add that up with the filtration capability of Jace Rein's Prodigy, well, this is the best you're going to get on 5, is what I'm really thinking. So keep in mind, we don't know what she's on. We see an island come out. We see basic island, and we're thinking, probably some sort of control build. But, honestly, the inkling's already in my head because, and it's more so kind of a piece of hidden information. Stsung, gave a pretty big thumbs up, a like to the Blue Moon deck that I ran competitively. And when I see the island, I start thinking Blue Moon because I see a basic. When a mountain come down, you see some of our banter going back and forth in the bottom down there. And I'm saying, oh, you're going to beat me with my own deck. And, just jokingly. And as you can see, it is what she's on. And the back to basics ends up just wrecking us terribly here. We play this guy out, thinking that, we need to get a threat on board. She completely gets our Jace with the Price of Progress. We attempt to bolt the Pyromancer. And really what the sub game is now for us, what we're hoping to do is, one, top deck, some basic lands, because we do run a decent amount, as you saw from the deck tag. I think it's like 2 plains, 4 islands, and like 2 mountains, which is not bad. But when you're on a 5 card hand, you need to fix. And, and we did. The second one we kind of had more of an inkling, but since we were on the play at the draw, we didn't really know what she was on. But after we saw the mountain drop second turn, we kind of knew we had fetched poorly. We probably should have gone for an island. I believe it was on the Tundra, or correction, on the Steam Vents. So we're stuck on 1 land now. She has 4 power in play and an active Jace and a back to basics. So we scoop it in. We know well she still has a couple turns it's going to take to kill us. It's going to happen. Like we can't win this one. We think through what we could do here. We can bolt the Mancer. And even if we get it, when she's drawing 2 cards a turn, plus probably hitting fetches to cycle away any bad cards, we're pretty far away. If the thing I think had stayed in play, we may have continued on a bit because we have the ounce to flipping her entire team of the Pyromancer and friends and getting in there for a decent bit of damage. But when we see Jace come down and our thing come back to hand and we draw an Imperial Recruiter, and we just know the only thing we can do this turn is drop her power down to 2 effectively. That's if we don't get dazed or something random or mental misstep. This game's just that's it. I don't think we're very favored in this one, like I kind of talked about. I think when you're on 3 colors, even if I think our mana base is built well for that deck or for this deck that we're playing, I just don't think it's favored here. I think when you're on 2 colors, it's a lot less greedy. It's a lot more consistent as far as mana pools. And if you're playing cards like that punish basic lands, then you're likely going to get me. Here you see we kind of play around the back to basics or the Blood Moon effects. I'm fine if she plays, a Magus or Blood Moon because Spire Bluff Canal is really just my mountain right now. So we play on the Snapcaster. You can say we took a beating here. So we play on the Snapcaster, and what the idea is, well, actually, let me go back one. So we cast a Brainstorm end step on her turn. We do that, one, really hoping to hit a fetch land, so we can cycle away some of the non-basics we have in our hand, because really what we're looking for are fetches or basic lands. because we have enough right now, you know, and we do get lucky and find it. And what we were trying to do there with the Snapcaster is trying to cast it in to see if we could get her to tap out to counter it. And if she didn't, then we would brainstorm, and see if we could find a relevant counter spell. If we had found something like a Force of Will or a Daze, we likely would have gone ahead and cast our Jace, tried to counter whatever she was doing. If not, we likely would have waited another turn, to leave Spell Snare up. Now, I see that she does counter my Snapcaster. On one land, there's very few cards she can be on, outside of like a pitch counter or a Daze, which she's going to take an island back into her hand for. So, like, I'm thinking in my head, like, what are the cards that, because you see, we end up playing out Jace, kind of what I'm going into. You see, we have a couple cards that get us. So we have Spell Pierce, which ends up being the card that does get us here. We have Force of Will, and then we have Daze. And I guess there's other random ones like Thwart or something like that, but I mean, it's not really playable. So there's really like 3 playable cards in the format that get us here. With her on 5 cards in one land, I think, hey, I win more games if I try to resolve my Jace here, as opposed to waiting to hold up counter magic to protect my Jace. But as you can see, she has it, and I'm like, darn it, and at this point, I think our chances of winning this match have just gone down significantly. We do end up attempting a Firebolt as she attempts a remand. We counter a remand to stop the card draw, really more than anything, and to stop value off Pyromancer. This 1/1 gets in there for a lot of damage. You'll see this thing beats us down for a couple long turns. Then we have an answer for it in 4th Bolt in hand, but I'm not about to blow 4th Bolt. I'm already down on cards. I want to save that thing to see if I can get 2-for-1 advantage off of it. See, Assault for Elemental, it's probably out of the board. It's fine. It's not great against the creatures I'm running. Because I'm not like White Weenie or something like that. I'm like that. But it's a good beater, and I can't counter it. We see a Pester might come down. We have to counter that thing because it's just she's not on fixed mana for Splinter Twin, but you have to generally respect that combo. If you don't, then you can just randomly lose off of it. So I respect it, and I do remand it once. I think I end up finding land, and then Pyroblast it the second time when I have my red mana back are available again. I think she does a tap dance. Yeah, she Mystic Confluences. We negate this, which we're kind of upset about because we're hoping to hold the negate for something on her turn like a Planeswalker. And I think if I'm right, she plays out the Pro White Dragon this turn. No, not this turn. So she's texting with her Elemental. We take it. We're not going to block with our Young Pyromancer. This turn, if I'm not mistaken, yeah, we end up playing out the Zealous Conscripts, kind of in hopes that, we can just take her Maze of Ith, attack in with both of our guys, and hit her, and then fix mana the following turn to get Kiki-Jiki into play. Doesn't work out that way. The thing gets Mystic Confluenced, or I'm sorry, Cryptic Commanded. As you can see, her hand's very, very strong. Very, very strong draw from her this game. We do finally get rid of the 1 Elemental. We get Venser Shaper Savanted, putting our 2/1 back into play, and then the Stormbreath Dragon comes down. So I want to stop for a minute. So Stormbreath Dragon, I've actually just recently started testing a little bit with this card, so I think it's a lot better. I don't see it, I guess, is the thing I wanted to point out. And I suppose there's also not a ton of decks that play like big red cards like Stormbreath Dragon or the other one that does 1 damage to all the flyers and taps them, and also has haste a 5/5. Can't remember that one's name. Lightning Breath Dragon or something like that, or Storm. I don't remember. But it's another lightning one. It doesn't have the Pro White. I've been testing with those 2 cards in 2 builds. So one of them being like a Stompy Gruul based mid-range strategy, and the other one actually being the deck that she's on now. For the Blue Moon that I ended up running, I did not run Stormbreath Dragon or the other 5/5/1 that does what I was previously talking about, because I found that I wanted to have a lot more board space against mono red. Red deck wins, and I couldn't really justify putting one of this card specifically in over a card like Anarchy that I just thought was more powerful holistically. And plus, I haven't seen it a lot in the field. There's only a couple players that really play Death and Taxes, myself being one of them. So this card probably came in from the board. I think it's fine because it applies good pressure. and it gets around a lot of the good removal that I have in white. I've got a decent bit of it in here. At this point, we know we're dead. I think we see our top deck and we draw like a land or something irrelevant. Yeah, Seachrome Coast. We play on our young Pyromancer and say, hey, good game, you got us. But I don't think we're a favored matchup. We're favored in this matchup, and she had some stellar draws. I think she'd be the first to admit that too. Looking through kind of how the hands paired up, that Spell Pierce I think really was our death knell in this game right here. Once we saw the Spell Pierce hit the Jace, we knew we were going to be in a bad way this entire game because if we weren't able to get up on card advantage, which we weren't after we had cast that. We figured it was going to be us fighting out of the hole, and it was. So we get quite badly trounced in this first game that we played against Stsung, but it was definitely a good game. I think we both played decent. So game two. So you know I come to this one too. I don't know what she's gonna be playing, but she ends up playing the same deck. But I kind of figured she may be because I know she loves this deck. I end up bringing White Weenie to this one. Now let me say I think like I said, I think the most unfavorable matchups for a deck like Blue Moon is this one and like Red Deck Wins, or like monocolored aggressive decks. I guess it could be green as well, but I think when you look at green, they tend to be a little more favored against green because even though green has ramp, they tend to cast relevant threats like a turn later than both Red Deck Wins and White Deck, or Death and Taxes, White Weenie. So where green is still powerful, I think green tends to win more of the mid-range matchups, whereas these decks right here, the White Weenie and the Red Deck Wins, tend to win more of the control matchups because you're able to get under their curve for reaction to your threats. So you see we have a hand here. What we're hoping to do is just sack lands off the top of the deck and get to Geddon range because, we're going to play a turn 1 Isamaru. We don't have a lot of humans to support champions in turn 1 play. And then we're hoping to go turn 2, Anafenza, and then turn 3, either 2 1-drops with Champion of the Parish and some other 1-drop human ideally, or an additional land and a new 3-drop threat. We have a pretty good curve in the hand, and if we just hit our lands, Armageddon is going to, I think, wreck her because she's a very counterspell deck. So Isamaru comes down, get in there, the Dogs of War, play Anafenza out. And Anafenza is a strong card. We're bantering about Anafenza because she knows Anafenza will spell her doom if she can't get it. We see her use Into the Royal. I'm fine with that. It's tempo advantage, but it's card disadvantage. I think there was some confusion in what we were saying. I said got there, and I think she thought I meant that her Into Royaling my Anafenza was getting there. I don't think that's so. I think what I was actually saying is that once I hit the 3 lands, I knew I'd gotten there because I was going to replay on Anafenza and then play the Champion of the Parish. Which really only precludes me in tempo from playing the Aven Mind Sensor. But because I hit the land, I'm able to play my 2 spells, and I don't really feel like I've lost that much tempo off the card. I guess I'm happy to have lost the tempo for 1 card in your hand. So we get 6 power on the board. Casual 6 power turn 3. We see a Vendilion Clip come down. We end up playing out the Aven Mind Sensor because we figure she's going to block the Anafenza, and I'd rather just get the pump on the Mind Sensor now, and if she gets a fetch land or something random, then maybe we can stop it, whatever. But we need to play our own threats rapidly. We hit our 4th land. We end up striking in to see if we can get her to tap her lands, and we do. She untaps 1 island, obviously feigning counterspell. But here's my logic. I end up playing out the Armageddon, and here's my thought. Like I figure, she may have a counterspell of some sort, but if she counters this and I manage to hit a land off the top, then I'm playing Sword, and if that gets countered, I'm playing Stonehewer. My mana is going to be tied up. So I play this out first because if something is going to get countered, I want it to be this. So I can play out my more relevant threats afterwards. If this doesn't get countered, I'm just going to win the game anyways in 2 turns. Because she's not going to... I don't think there are cards in her deck that allow her, even if she draws 2 lands in a row, to beat what we have going on the board. I mean, maybe if she has, like, Bolt... Arc Trail in hand, and she hits Mountain, you name X land off the top, then maybe at that point she can. But the chances of that are very, very nominal. So I think Armageddon is the play here, and she doesn't have the counter magic like she kind of had pretended or feigned. And we hit in for half of her life, or correction, for 4 damage, and then we put on a 2 turn clock with really no hopes of getting out of it. The second game, is actually, I think, quite the we actually get a very good early start. We take a beating in the mid game. So if you look at our hand, we're running. We have a great card, right? In Mardu War Reaper, and it's fine. Actually, you'll find that like cards like Mardu War Reaper, I don't run like the vanilla 2/1s. Most of the 2/1s I run have like little small, like I would call them half card abilities on them. Like this guy does. Like he has random upside against Reanimator. Um, but like they really are kind of like the bread and butter of the deck because like you get this guy down against a matchup like this, and like they can't counter him unless they have like mental misstep randomly. They can't counter him, and no one wants to spend 2 mana burn spells on this guy. And you'll find they end up sticking around for a long time, and they end up like getting in there for like 6 to 8 damage. Which I mean, if it's a 1 mana investment, that's well worth it. I don't think I'd ever play the vanilla ones because they're just they're too meh. And you don't want too many of them. But when you're able to get a 2/1 on board, like first turn, like they do work for you. She puts out a Pyromancer. We end up Journey to Nowhere in this because we don't want her to get card advantage or virtual card advantage off it in the form of tokens. Crank in there for 2. Ends up Serum Visions, casting Serum Visions. That's a card I've kind of come off. I don't know if I like it as much in this format anymore. I love Preordain, I love Ponder, and I like Brainstorm in this format. Serum Visions because it's random off the top. I don't know. I haven't found the card to be as strong anymore. And it kind of stinks to have to fetch the turn after you use Serum Visions. So we get our Sense Tactician, Flame Tongue Kabu, Logic Knot on the Selfless Spirit, which we're kind of working up to the Hollowed Spirit Keeper at this point. Now, this may have been a misplay. It may have been smarter for me. The psychic play is to hang back with the Hollowed Spirit Keeper because you'll see what happens up next is we end up getting Earthquaked. Which we lose our Hallowed Spirit Keeper in a fight with Flame Tongue Kabu. We get the 3 spirits off of it. It may have made more sense to still play the line we did as far as creature plays, but not attack with the Hallowed Spirit Keeper. And then if she opts to Earthquake, we get a bazillion 1/1 flyers that can just beat in there, and then whatever we end up finding out the Windbrisk Heights becomes a thing in play. But as you'll see, we do attack in. I don't know. I still kind of support that line. I think you still want to attack in there. We give her the spells or lands, and she takes the lands. I'm thinking in my mind, like, what do you have? I mean, Maze is decent against this deck, but we end up seeing here is just, we're done. Like, we can't beat a Stormbreath Dragon. That thing's ridiculous. And you'll find we land down. We land down pretty heavily. See a Ponder cast, I believe a Trinket Mage. At this point, I think she finds her Engineered Explosives, we play out the Banisher Priest, taking the Trinket Mage, pass the turn back. She bolts the Banisher. We path our own Banisher because, at this point, why not just thin the deck? That thing, the dragon's going to kill us regardless if she ever hits enough mana for it. We see Jace, and we hit another land. Yeah, once we hit another land, we know we're dead. I don't know what I was hoping to draw there. I don't know if there's a card I could draw there that does it from this position. Maybe. No, there's really not. We're pretty much dead. Once we started landing out in the Stormbreath Dragon head, we were just done. But, going back, like the one decision that we did make that, possibly could have been made differently was the Rolling Earthquake turn. Then again, when we see the bolt come out of her hand, we also feel okay about our call because, I mean, if we don't attack him with the Hallowed Spirit Keeper, likely her play is just to bolt it, make a bunch of 1/1s, and then just Earthquake still. However, let's check this out. Yeah, Rolling Earthquakes without Force of Ship. I was thinking it was actually actual factual Earthquake. I'll take a moment though to talk about this card right here. So I think, and let me pull up my collection real fast because I just recently got brought into this card, and Stsung, this is for you, or anyone who wants an Earthquake-like effect. I think this is actually the card you want. Sudden Demise, I think it is. Yeah, so I think Sudden Demise is the card that you really want. I didn't know about this card. I believe it's a commander card. I actually was brought to this card by looking through a deck list made by Johnny Rogue. So I think this deck gets after the effect that you want in a card like Earthquake, but it's not per se parallel between players, and it doesn't damage you. So where I think this card, so you read it, choose a color, and then Sudden Demise is essentially it says Earthquake, deal X to each creature of the chosen color, but it doesn't do damage to players. There may be some matchups where Earthquake is specifically being used as a fireball effect to the player's face, but I think I think more so this card it benefits you in the matchups that you want in, like Death and Taxes, like Red Deck Wins, like Mono Green. Um, I just think this is a stronger option as opposed to like Earthquake or Rolling Earthquake for the horsemanship style. But just an idea. The card is like $1. I didn't know about it. I just randomly saw it on someone's sideboard, read it, and I was like, oh, this card's great, And I think in a deck like Blue Moon, it has a perfect home because you don't per se want to take the damage to your face in the matchups where that kind of card is good. All right, so let's do the third game. I think we ended up making this one. Yeah, we do. So this is actually the biggest reason I made the video series because of this game. This is a good game. We play a very strong game. I think both of us play well, and I think it ends up coming down to luck, which I think if both players play well in well paired decks, it tends to come down to luck. So Sense Tactician now turn one. So just to go over the keep, I have 2 lander. I have 3 1-drops. What really irks me on to keep this hand is I have some early disruption in the form of Turning to Nowhere in case she plays like an early Pyromancer or the Thing in the Ice, something like that. I have a Jotun Grunt that can kind of do some work for me in like the mid game when the graveyards get a little bigger after attrition. But really, what it comes down to is I have a Benevolent Bodyguard, which I very much so value Benevolent Bodyguard. It is essentially Mother of Runes with haste. And I got it. Like it's not a repeatable effect, but generally speaking, Mother of Runes is not a repeatable effect either. And the reason I say that is because an opponent is not going to use their targeted removal until they have 2 pieces of it, so they can get whatever they want to get, whether it be the Mother of Runes or something else. And typically we're going to see like sorcery speed and then instant speed over the top of Mother Runes activation. But Benevolent Bodyguard, great card as well. I run it here because, although it is a 1/1 for 1, that effect is very powerful in a game. So we play our Sense Technician, the plan being that, we're going to play out the Deathblade Elite, which I also think is a good card. I mean, it is a 1/1 for 1 again, but it has the Provoke clause on it, which is a great effect. It ends up eating mana dorks. And in this specific instance, it happens to also be a soldier, which means Sense Tactician can make it grow over time. And we have the ability to protect it with cards like Benevolent Bodyguard. Kind of what we're thinking with the keep. Not an extremely strong keep, but not a hand that I feel like I could throw back either. So we play out the Deathblade, we play out the Benevolent Bodyguard, get in there for our 1. Kind of a slower start for White Weenie, or Death and Taxes. Pull Thalia Heretic Cathar. We're not bummed to see that, but right now we're really hoping for his land, because I think Hero Bladehole will just close this game out if we can ever land that punch. That card just wins games fast. We pump again, go in for 4. Now, as you can see, like all we've played at this point, that's why I think this deck is great. Like all we've invested in at this point is 3 mana, and Stsung is down to 11 life. Now, given she's done 1 damage of that to herself with her fetch land, she's resolving right now. But for an investment of 3 mana, I have taken away essentially like close to half the opponent's life, which to me is. Can you really gripe about that? I mean, yeah, they're 1-drops, and yeah, they're all 1 mana 1/1s, but they work pretty well together, and they do some work. We see a Flame Tongue here. We end up protecting it with the Benevolent Bodyguard because that's really the only relevant creature. That's the best creature we have on the board by far. We draw a Core Firewalker, which I'm ecstatic to draw. I'm like, wow, I have a protection from Red Guy that gains me life when red spells are cast, and as a soldier, so I can pump it with Sense Tactician. We're very disappointed to eat that Daze. We know we're going to keep her off mana for a bit and forced it back into her hand, but I think if that card resolved, this game would have ended up closing out a lot sooner than it did. And it gives me a little bit more protection against cards like her protection from white cards. The Stormbreath Dragon. So we finally hit 3 mana. She's seen our hand at this point. I'm not going to try to go down with a Haymaker like Thalia or sort of Feast and Famine with that much mana open. I cast the Jotun Grunts. because the way I figure it, if the Jotun Grunts gets, in this case, remanded or countered, I still have mana up so on her turn, I can pump the Deathblade Elite, making it a 4/4, and then on the following turn, have the ability to pump it to a 5/5, which means that it wins in a fight against the Flame Tongue Kavu, which I'll provoke. So we pass it back, and I believe, we see an Engineered Explosives come out for 1. And we're like, well, rats, but we're still going to carry on our plan because, if we can force her to activate the Engineered Explosives this turn, then I don't think it likely that on 1 mana she has the ability to counter my Hero of Bladehold. Now, she's already played the Daze, so she specifically would have to have Force of Will, pretty much, is it. So if she blows the Engineered Explosives and I land the Hero of Bladehold, she either has an answer in hand for the following turn, or, no, she has to have an answer the following turn. So we see that, because of, I think, smart play on our part and on her part, so we attack in. She does block. We pump to 5. We just trade, which, I figure at this point I have her on counter magic, very specifically. I have her on counter magic. So I'm going to play on my weakest spell because I think, from this point, what's going to happen is she's going to continue to make land drops, I think, and eventually she's going to get to a point where she has to pop the Engineered Explosives, but it'll likely be in her main of next turn, which leaves the board open. So I want to force her to use up the counter magic, and then blow the explosives likely on her turn or on my next turn, so that I can resolve another threat. Because what I never want to have happen is the mono white play is I never want the board to be open. If the board's open, then her counter spells are live. If the board is open, then her counter spells are live. If I have things on the board, then her counter spells are essentially junk, because she has to deal with what it is I'm killing her with, especially when she's on 9, because most of my stuff will kill her pretty quick, 2-3 turns. So we play out the Jotun Grunts, fully expecting it to get countered, and it does. It eats a forbid. Yeah, cool. That's fine. She passes it back. We find a Caracas, which is an awesome, awesome pull. So that gives us a lot more ability with Thalia. We see her pay the 2 mana. We figure, hey, if you're on counterspell, get it. We play out the Thalia, Heretic Cathar, because we have Caracas back up for it. End up jumping in there with a Thalia. We see an Electrolyze come out. We push the Thalia back to our hand, and then replay it again. We're just going to run it back. Or correction, no, we play the hero. So her top deck was counterspell that turn. She gets the hero. Well, I assume it was counterspell. It may not have been. She may have held that specifically for the hero because of how good that card is. She eats our Knight of the White Orchid, which I'm fine with because I have a secondary Thalia, which I end up playing out following that, making her spells worse. Play another Thalia, so classic flavor fail on dual Thalias in play. But we're making her spells cost more, and we're getting her on all our non-basics. Interesting call there. So we let Repeal resolve. We could have Caracased our own Thalia back to hand, but I want to leave Caracas open so that my other Thalia can't be burned out on her turn. We cast a Sword of Feast and Famine. She ends up resolving a factor. We give her everything, our Force of Will, because, I kind of like the Sword to resolve. She takes everything, which is really just a bunch of lands, and Price of Progress, which does nothing to me, or does 2 damage to me and a ton of damage to her. She pulls Arc Trail out of the deck, which is a great draw, so I have to choose one of the 2 Thalias that I want to Caracas. My Caracas, the 3-mana Thalia, it's a better card. And then play on Imposing Sovereign. I believe this gets, complicated, which, hey, she didn't get complicated value at least. We equip up the Thalia because, we figure, unless she has like a 3 damage, or she has a 3 damage spell in hand, which a lot of hers do 3 damage, she's not going to be able to get the Thalia. Plus, the Maze of Ith plus the threat of her counter magic has made us be very inefficient with our mana. So we just go for it there because we don't think she has it. She plays out Trink. Trink gets nothing at this point because I believe the Pithing Needle came out of her deck. We end up equipping up Kithion because we want to force the 3 damage through with the Thalia. We have Caracas for both. We end up playing out the Hollowhenge Spirit Keeper. So if she wants to blow up our legendary creatures, we still have the Hollowhenge, which she probably has to block and kill. Which will convert into a ton of 1-drops. So some of the banter here, and so I think both of us played this game very well. And this is a very, very, very close game. But we get very lucky, and we end up pulling Brave the Elements from the deck. This is like the only trick this deck runs because it's such a powerful effect, especially in a curve-based or horizontal swarm or rush strategy. which I think in a lot of ways Death and Taxes are what Weenie is. This card is just second to none. I mean, you play a one mana spell and it says, hey, you can't block any of my stuff, and you're dead. Um, so we top that, and at this point we know she can untap one of our soldiers, our little guys, with Maze of Ith. But she's still going to take a minimum of damage here, which would put her to lethal on board, so she's forced to concede. Very good games. I think very well played by Sung. I think we played decent this last game as well. But very fun. Definitely enjoyed them. Hope you enjoyed these matches as well. I think Sung is one of the better players that I played in this format, and I tend to appreciate her builds. I think we tend to evaluate cards in a similar way, and under a similar perspective on what they do. But I think it's funny because I think Blue Moon is actually probably one of the better, like one of the top decks, kind of based on our current meta. It's funny to see that a deck that I think is as good as that can still lose to just good solid, well played but good solid aggro beats from like a Death and Taxes deck. Really just getting under its curve, which is just kind of like, to me, it's classic Magic. Well played by both players. I hope if you enjoyed this format, which I didn't really kind of go into my initial diatribe. This is 100 Card Singleton. If you did kind of enjoy watching or you're interested in playing, there's a small community of 10 to 12 folks that play this format religiously every Saturday between the hours of 15:30, until complete, and or 3:30 p.m. And that's Eastern Standard Time. If you are interested, it's called the Chainsaw Massacre. It is a player-run event, and if you go to gatherling.com, I'm saying gatherling.com, you can register there and put your deck in. We also have a quite lively forum in the MTG Salvation webpage, which is linked through the Chainsaw Massacre link inside Gatherling. Hope you enjoyed these matches, and if you have any questions or are interested in the deck list, I don't have hers. I could probably ask her for it though. I'd be happy to share. All right, take care, and I hope you enjoy the videos.